Hello and welcome to our webinar on in-laws and successful relationships. We know that if you happen to be having problems with in-laws, that you'll probably be pretty anxious to hear what we have to say. And if maybe your problems are not that serious with your in-laws, there may be some things in your family or your spouse's family, maybe some relatives, for example, that may be causing some irritation of somewhat. You'll also want to hear what we have to say because we have some things to say about that too. But before we begin, allow us to introduce ourselves. I'm Jesse Johnson.
And I'm Melva Thomas Johnson. We are your hosts. If this is your first time joining us, we'd like to welcome you. If you have taken previous webinars with us, thank you and welcome back. We have a lot to share with you about in laws and successful relationships. As a couple, we've had to deal with various in law situations ourselves. We've had a successful marriage for over 36 years. We started out as a blended family that included the two of us and Jesse's two minor sons from a previous marriage. Professionally, we are both licensed therapists specializing in marriage and relationship counseling. We counsel couples in our office in Royal Oak, Michigan, conduct weekend workshops for couples, are public speakers, authors, and in general, we're good people. The kind of people you probably want to get to know. Our mission and purpose for what we do is to offer hope to couples in marital or relationship problems by teaching them the absolute things they need to learn in order to build, maintain, and sustain happy, meaningful, and successful relationships over time. We have been quite successful in our 37 years in private practice. So, married 36 years, working together 37 years, that's a lot. We love sharing information and relationship tools to those seeking answers to their relationship dilemmas. Therefore, this webinar is one way that we try to be of help. This webinar is not about us, it's about you. So Jesse, let's get started sharing what we'd like to present to those who have joined us about successful in-law marriages and relationships.
I think that's a pretty good idea. Okay. Our presentation today will focus on three primary objectives. The first includes the things that we believe are important to promote successful in-law relationships. The second includes things that are prohibitive to that. And the third includes some suggestions and some tips that we'd like to offer to help you improve the relationship with your in-laws. Some of what we will share with you comes from our own experience in building positive relationships with our in-laws. We'd like to begin by stating that it has been said that in-laws can either be a blessing or a curse, depending upon, of course, whether or not they're supportive or a detriment to a couple and your relationship. Both you and your in-laws share in the kind of relationship that you'll have. You'll see that more clearly as we continue, and we have some suggestions to offer to you.
You might be one of those millions of spouses or partners who have been struggling with one or more of your in-laws. When we talk about in-laws, that includes, but is not limited to, your parents, your partner's parents. It can also include their brothers or sisters and other family members. Any one of these in-law problem situations can put a tremendous strain on your relationship. And when there is more than one person or family member that's a problem, that strain is intensified. It can result in you being up at night, crying yourself to sleep, and or engaging in non-problem solving behaviors that do not solve the problem. Such behaviors can include overeating, overindulgence in alcohol, use and abuse of prescription and illegal drugs, affairs, overspending, etc., etc., etc. Your attempts to deal with the situation may have failed. While you may have addressed them with your spouse or partner, They may have discounted the seriousness of your concern, may have turned it on you and made it your fault, may have taken the side of the in law, and you may feel powerless to do anything about the situation.
And while many of the in law problems in relationships are related to a partner's parents, some in law problems that you mentioned, Melva, can be with other family members. They can be equally, and in some cases, even more of a problem than with their parents. Some examples of what I mean might include, for example, an in law who seems to always get themselves into some kind of trouble that may even include the law. They may expect others, like you and your partner, for example, or other family members, to bail them out. An example of this is several years ago, I had a friend who came to me to talk to me about a situation in his family. There were 9 children, so it was a large number of kids in the family, and most were all adults. One of their brothers, however, was constantly getting into trouble and ending up in jail. My friend had really a really good job and managed his money well, so he and his wife were able to put a few dollars away. But every time his brother would get locked up, he would call his mother for money to bail him out. His mother then, in turn, would call my friend and ask for the money that she needed in order to get him released on bond. Every time this happened, my friend would be in a dilemma. He would be caught between his mother and his wife, and the wife was certainly not in agreement with spending money to get him bailed out. So he came to me, my friend, asking for advice. And after listening to him for a while, my advice to him was to allow his brother to deal with the consequences of his behavior by staying in jail. As long as he and his mother continued to bail him out, they were both enabling his behavior, almost kind of like condoning it. So my friend agreed to my suggestion, and even though it took a couple of more times for his brother to get locked up and have to stay in jail, he eventually decided to make better choices with his wife.
And I'm imagining that things were better at home between him and his wife as well.
That's true.
Other kinds of in law problems include, for instance, an in law who is irresponsible with their money, who is constantly asking for a loan that rarely, if ever, gets paid back, or an in law that doesn't like you and tries to put you down at every opportunity, even though you have gone out of your way to create a more positive relationship with them. It would be great if everyone, including our family members as well as in laws, would make responsible decisions, handling their business, stay out of trouble, manage their lives and affairs correctly, and treat us with the dignity and respect that we're entitled to. The truth is that everyone is not going to do that. It's also true that it's not in our own best interest to allow their behaviors to put a strain on our own relationship or marriage. One extremely important way of making sure that this doesn't happen is for you as a couple to discuss and agree upon some boundaries that will serve to insulate you between you and your in-laws.
It's important to keep in mind that when you marry and or decide to live together and make a pledge to be partners in a committed relationship, that your relationship comes first. We are strong advocates for marriage versus just living together for a whole lot of reasons. One important one is because marriage clearly defines the relationship between you, your partner, your family members, as well as financial institutions, your children, and the courts, for example. The term wife or husband carries a lot more weight, importance, and status than girlfriend or boyfriend or the person I just happen to be living with in the moment. Wife or husband denotes a more permanent status. Girlfriend, boyfriend, friend, roommate, and so forth may be considered by in-laws, by in-laws and others as being temporary. Therefore, they may not consider you as having earned the respect or status that you deserve or that you may be seeking.
Now, here's some good news. There are happy, um, there are happily married couples who have happy relationships with their in-laws. We need to put that into perspective because it's not all doom and gloom, right?
That's true. That's very true. We'd like to share some some examples of some very common in-law situations that often result in serious problems in marriage and in committed love relationships. The first is parents who have not allowed their adult children to emancipate from home. We see this quite often, though. You
Yeah.
know. In far too many instances, the parent, which is usually the mother, has become emotionally dependent on their adult child. And that adult child needs to learn how to become an independent and self sufficient individual. And equally important, the parent needs to let their child live their own life while they create a life of their own. Here's an example. Someone told us of a 45-year-old man uh, who since his birth had been living at home with his parents. He had never, since becoming an adult, lived on his own, even though he earned enough money to have his own place. His mother um, liked the way the things were. She always made sure his room was clean. She made up his bed, washed and ironed his clothes, puts them away, and cooks all his meals. He had absolutely no responsibilities for anything. They both seemingly preferred it this way, and he didn't want to leave, and she didn't want him to either. They have, in our opinion, an unhealthy codependent relationship. So let's ask a question. Let's imagine that by some kind of fate, that he would happen to fall in love and decide to marry. What kind of problems do you anticipate that the two of them would have? It wouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. He probably would want his wife to be his mother and act in that role and do everything for him. And this would cause some serious problems in the relationship. Another example is an adult child who is irresponsible with their money. They may also have a good job, make good money, but is undisciplined in terms of how to use it. They regularly run short of money they need to pay their bills, and they depend upon their parents for money when they run short. We consider this as another example of an unhealthy codependent relationship. So, again, let us ask you, what do you imagine would happen if this adult child got married? Most likely the pattern would continue. If their spouse refused to support their irresponsible behavior, it is likely that they might go to their parents for money, and this would result in a huge problem in the marriage.
Now, I can hear some of the men who are listening to this thinking, okay, these are examples about men. And I do want to say that this also applies to women as well.
It is not gender
Yes, I just wanted to point
related.
that out.
Okay,
Just wanted to point that out.
because women can do the same.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Okay. So another problem in in-laws with the in-laws consists of parents who intrude into their adult children's marriages. Often this is done by parents who insist on offering unsolicited advice and then insisting that their advice be followed. This is true. It is true that those of us as parents have a great deal of wisdom, a lot of wisdom that we can offer to our children. We used to tell our sons that the reason why uh, the two of us, in terms of us telling our sons that the reason why we are now so wise is because we made a lot of mistakes along our life journey. We learn from those mistakes, so of course we feel like we're entitled to give them advice, but
Right.
we have to be real careful about doing that. Our children also must live their own lives and learn from their mistakes. It's really okay to offer advice and or suggestions to our children, but as parents, we must always ask for permission to do so. And if our children say no, then we should respect that. I remember sometimes I caught myself giving advice to our sons and then unsolicited advice. And then when I was done and I caught myself, I would say, oh, yes, that is advice you didn't ask for.
Right.
So even leave it.
Right. That's true. Now, we'd like to offer a suggestion to those of you who don't like your parents intruding into your business. We find this really, really very interesting because quite often what happens is that we invite our parents into our business because we tell them our business. So if you don't want them to be all up in your business, then our advice is don't tell them your business. You know, sometimes, for example, you may be having some marital or relationship problems at home, and you may want to go to your parents just to vent or to ask for some advice. When you do this, just understand that you have now invited them into your business, so don't be surprised when they tell you what to do or they put you down if you don't follow it.
And if you decide to talk to a friend or some other family member about your problems, don't be surprised if you end up listening to them tell you about their problems rather than listening to you. Many times, if they do offer advice, it's really not helpful because if they're having problems in their relationship, they don't want they don't know any more than you do about how to solve your problem. Your marital problems must be addressed and resolved between you and your partner. If you can't solve them on your own, it's not such a good idea telling your family members about it or your friends. It's far better to seek the help of a competent, trained, neutral, professional marriage counselor or relationship counselor.
What we've been talking about is the importance of setting clear boundaries between you and your in-laws. You and your partner rather, know your in-laws and the kinds of problems you have faced and are likely to face dealing with them in certain situations. It is important that you sit down together and develop a strategy for how you will deal with the anticipated situation. And it's important you do that again together. By creating a game plan, you are prepared in advance, and both of you know what you will do and how you will go about dealing with the situation should it arise. An example of this is a couple uh, whose visits to one of their parents was so unpleasant that it always ended up in a huge argument between the two partners or spouses. This caused a major problem in their relationship. But both realized that it was important to find a way together to deal with it because they wanted to have a relationship with this particular parent. When they had calmed down, they did just what I'm suggesting. From their previous visits, they listed each problem area and agreed upon a strategy on how they would deal with it so it would no longer be a problem. So they tried it, it worked, and it has continued to do so. Like most problem areas in your relationship, it requires the ability to communicate effectively, meaningfully, and sitting down together and having a conversation that will result in effective problem solving.
So here's another area: holiday expectations of in laws. Holidays, birthdays, weddings, funerals, graduations, and other special family occasions can be especially troublesome because each family has certain expectations around them. These have been traditions that have been done for years, and every family member is expected to comply. The problem is that both you and your partner come from families that have their own set of expectations and traditions around these special occasions. And the simple truth is that often there will be conflict. It may be humanly impossible to meet two sets of conflicting expectations. In fact, you or your partner may have wanted to break from some of these family expectations, but were reluctant because of the repercussions. Now that you're married or in a serious committed relationship, provides an excuse for you to break away from the family tradition. We suggest that you and your partner make an agreement on what will work for the two of you around the holidays and being with family. We recommend that this be done well in advance of the holiday or special occasion and shared with family members in advance. By doing this, your family members will not be expecting you to do what you've always done because they have information about your plans. So it's like it's real important for each couple to set up their own rituals,
Yes,
traditions, because they're building a new life together. And
absolutely.
that is what they will be sharing with families while they include their family in their plans and they're connecting, you know, during those special occasions.
Right. Okay. The following examples are some specific things that some in-laws have done that makes it clear that they don't like you. These are from two of our fellow marriage and family therapists, Stephen Martin and Victoria Consello. Consello. Here are some examples. Number one, your mother-in-law constantly complains that you're spoiling the kids, or your father-in-law tells you how to manage your money, or criticizes you for your lack of ambition as a provider. Maybe your in-laws were hostile from the word go and make their disappointment with their son's choice of a wife very clear at every opportunity. One mother-in-law may do this by keeping a framed photo of her son's former girlfriend prominently displayed in her home
Mm.
without one of you.
Whoa.
Another father-in-law sends checks to his daughter, but demands that she keep these secret from you for fear that you'll mismanage the money.
All of these problems are reported to marriage and family therapists on a regular basis. There are as many varieties as there are people, but most in law problems tend to fall into one of the following categories. You have an in law challenge if your partner's parents, number one, treat you disrespectfully, ignore you, or are openly hostile. Two, criticize you frequently in your presence or to your partner. Three, attempt to control you and or your partner using money. Four, attempt to control you and or your partner by using guilt.
Or five, give unsolicited advice. Six, attempt to drag you into family chaos caused by alcohol or drug abuse or fighting or other kinds of ongoing personal issues. Seven, expect your partner to choose between you and them. Eight, expect your partner to meet their unmet emotional and or practical needs. If any one of these issues is severe, it can disrupt your personal well-being and perhaps your marriage or relationship too. If more than one of these dynamics is at work, it's important to take action to curb their potential negative impact.
And and if it just appears to be like a mild problem right now, it's important to nip it in the bud
Yes,
because before it becomes severe or
right.
serious. Uh, Martin and Costello say that there are certain advisable boundaries that should be in place in your relationship with your in laws. These are intended to ensure your well being and protect your marriage and children or your committed relationship from possible negative effects from problematic in laws. Of course, there are individual differences in family styles, but in most cases, these guidelines tend to protect everyone involved. Your in laws should: one, treat you with respect and courtesy; two, call or ask permission to enter your home; three, not interfere with your parenting values and rules. 4, not make one of your children a favorite to the detriment of another.
Or 5, not expose you and your children to alcohol or drug abuse or violent or otherwise abusive behaviors. 6, not attempt to exclude you from family events. 7, not interfere in your relationship with your partner. Now, this last item is by far the most important and probably the hardest to enforce for all concerned. That's because this kind of behavior unfairly calls into question your partner's loyalty, potentially causing them to have to choose between you and them. It is possible that in spite of everything that you attempt to do, that your mother-in-law or some other family member just may not like you. This is something that you'll just have to learn to accept and live with. There are things in a marriage or a committed relationship that simply cannot be solved. This is an example, for example, a mother or father-in-law or other family members uh, that just may not like you. This is an example of what marriage researcher John Gottman says that cannot be solved, but rather it has to be managed. So therefore, it's important for you and your partner to find a way to manage it rather than trying to solve it because may not be solvable.
You know, the first time I heard that he said that only 31% of relationship problems can be solved. Only 31%. Then the other 69% have to be managed. So you
Right.
have to figure out a way to live with it um, in the most respectful way that you can.
Right.
Um, so here's another problem. Um, if you plan on sticking with your spouse, then you're also stuck with your in laws. That's the Dr. Philism. And he has advice for dealing with in laws. There can be no divided loyalties. When you get married and start your own family, or if you're in a committed relationship and you start your own family, that's where your primary loyalty needs to be. Good fences make good neighbors, he says. Your in laws need to be your neighbors, and there needs to be really good fences set up. Set boundaries about when they are and are not invited into your lives. You've got a finite amount of physical and emotional energy. If your in laws are draining you, you may need to change the boundaries. Reassure them that you're not closing them out. I want to say that again. Reassure them that you're not closing them out. You're simply focusing on yourselves. But you know, you're not just focusing on yourselves. You're just figuring out a way so that everybody can be in sync with each other with the expanded relationship
Yes.
of the connection that you have with each other.
Right. And he also adds that once you have set boundaries, talk to your parents about them. And I think that's kind of related to what you just said, Nova. It's
Mm-hmm.
important that your parents don't feel as though that they're being pushed aside, but that you're being more inclusive as opposed to shutting people out.
Yes, the how that you're working out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, he also adds that it's important for us guys, or for women, I think, to understand that the other woman in every man's life is his mother. If your husband starts out with, well, my mother does it this way, then you can tell him to go over and sleep with her. They'll go over real well, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Okay. If a wife has a problem with her mother in law, it's the husband who needs to step in and fix it. Likewise, if the husband or the man in a committed relationship doesn't see eye to eye with his in laws, it's the woman or the wife that needs to step in. The person with the primary relationship, the son or daughter, not the in law, needs to be the messenger. He also suggests that you negotiate with your own partner the role that you want your in laws to have. Don't assume that you're on the same page until you talk about it. Try not to criticize your spouse for his or her relationship with his or her parents. This may only lead to more clinginess or complications.
So here's the bottom line. It is important for you to continue to express love to your parents and caretakers um, that raised you and have a rich and active relationship with them. But anytime that you turn away from your partner to resolve a relationship issue, that's a bad thing. That'll get you in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a problem in the marriage or your committed relationship, you need to resolve it in the relationship. Keep in mind that your parents only know what you tell them. If you go to them every time you're angry and frustrated and having problems in your relationship, they hear that, but they don't hear when you make up.
Here are some practical tips in addition to the ones that we've already offered to you. Research indicates that it is usually the mother and daughter-in-law who are the primary sources of conflict in marriages and committed relationships. So here are some additional tips. One, when visiting your partner's family, do it as a couple and make the experience a positive one for all concerned. Two, it's best to live some distance apart from both of your parents. In our case, for example, our families are in Indiana and in California, so we're in Michigan, so we have some distance between us. Try to find out ways to enjoy some of the same types of leisure time activities with your in-laws to make such times enjoyable for all of you.
We may have the distance, but you miss them.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So, there are times that I wanted them to be closer so we could connect more often.
That's true.
Consider addressing your mother and father-in-law. Some people call their in-laws mother-in-law and father-in-law. I kind of like that
I
term.
do too.
With enduring titles such as mother and father, or mom and dad, or mother-in-law or father-in-law. This helps to build a bond and connection. If they don't appear to be receptive, let it be okay and address them in whatever way they prefer. You and your mate must make your own decisions regarding schooling, financing, children, employment, etc. While you might decide to seek the counsel for advice from your parents and in laws, the final decision must be made between you and your mate. When responding to your in laws, it is best to do it together and to be sure to include what we have talked uh, that we have talked it over and what we decided is. So that's a real important sentence
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking to your um, either one of the in-laws. And like you said earlier, the person who is the biological adult child is the one who takes the lead in the discussion, and they are the ones that will say, we talked it over and what we decided is.
Right.
Know that if you ask your in-laws for money, it usually is going to have some strings attached. Know what they are, what is expected, and if there are unacceptable expectations, um, decline the aid and find some other way of dealing with it. Express appreciations to your in-laws and refer to them in positive ways. Remember, you are not likely to change the things you don't like about your in-laws, sorry. So learn to love and accept them for who they are. We were fortunate in our relationship to have in-laws with whom we've had a wonderful relationship. While things started off pretty well, we did have a couple of touchy areas where Jesse and I had to handle, and handle them we did. By using many of the ideas we've shared in this webinar, we were able to address them and created a deeply bonded, respectful, and genuinely loving connections with our in-laws.
An example of that and just how well it went was that a few years ago, we invited both sides of our families, that's Melva's family and my family, to Michigan for a joint family weekend. It was kind of like a family reunion, except that it included not only our parents, but also our siblings, our cousins, aunts, uncles, and all of our family members. We rented a hotel where everyone stayed together because we had family here from all over the United States. We planned some wonderful times together, just connecting with my family, with Melva's family, and we had such a great time that family members are still talking about that. In fact, they want to know when we're going to do it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to give them a turn.
Yes, absolutely.
We hope that the ideas we have presented to you in this webinar has been helpful. If you've been having problems with your in-laws, try using some of these ideas. Be patient. It may take a while to create the kind of relationship you would like with your in-laws. And in time, things may turn around.
Again, we want to thank you for taking the time to participate today. Every month, we offer a free live webinar. So maybe you're unable to attend? Hey, we got you covered. Everyone who registered is also given on-demand access to the webinar to view at your convenience. Visit us at www.mfgmarriage.com for more information. We're also on Facebook, so you can join the community for daily inspiration for couples at facebook.com/MFG This has been Jesse Johnson.
And Melva Thomas Johnson signing off for now.
We wish you, as always, a blessed, productive, and an awesome day.